All right, here I am, Michael Pearl at the door, No Greater Joy Ministries, and I'm telling you about how the ministry of No Greater Joy developed and how we began to write books and all this has come about. Well, I was telling you about last time about how that we ended up in a little community in Perry County, Tennessee. It's the most unoccupied county, poorest county, I think, in Tennessee. I think there's only like 6,000 or 7,000 people in the whole county, so that gives you an idea. So Deb and I and the family went down there and viewed the county. It was a beautiful place, rocks and spring creeks and stuff, and lots of farmers. And I just had this desire to get away from the busy life. I was selling paintings as an artist and having to go to malls and different places, making a lot of money. And then during off seasons, I would make kitchen cabinets or do other kinds of artwork or welding, different things I could do. Pretty well just entertaining myself, having fun. But we lived pretty well. And I got the feeling that the kids were too coddled. Everything was provided for them. There was no real need for them. We gave them chores, but no real need. So I thought, what we need is to homestead. So we went out and found 100 acres, made an offer on it, and they finally took our offer, and we spent about 3 months getting ready. I built a sawmill and got some chainsaws and trucks and stuff all ready, old junky stuff, and got them fixed up. And so the time came in August when we settled on the land, and boys and I went up there to the land first, and we set up a tent. And for 5 days, we lived in that tent, set our sawmill up, and we began to drag trees, borrowed a mule from a neighbor. I'd never done anything like, never been close to one before. We borrowed a mule and borrowed the kid to operate it, about a 9-year-old kid to operate that mule. Mule weighed 1,500 pounds, big old thing. And so we drug logs out of the woods and sawed them up. And in 4 days, we built a little shack that was about 16 by 20 to live in. And family came down. We tapped the spring water, brought spring water in, put a black barrel on top of a tower to sun to heat it for a shower. Let the water drip down from the black barrel. And so that's the way we took our showers, and then we drank the spring water. And so we continued to log August, September, and October, November, and start building in about October, I guess, and built a pretty good-sized house, about 1,500 square feet, I guess, all stuff right off the land there, built it with green lumber. And by Christmas of that year, we had that house finished. By finished, I mean there were no doors on it, but we had good blankets hanging over them. And the floor was rough sawed with cracks in it, but we had a floor in it. And we had it wired and everything, and water running in it. So we were able to put a wood-burning stove and move in there. We cooked on that wood-burning stove. Put a barrel in the attic to heat the hot water through thermosiphon. So we had our hot water. And we began to live. We had a rough winter. We had corn, whole corn, which we ground. And we had corn meal, corn bread, corn pone, corn mush. We had corn everything. And we bought 2 sacks of cabbage, which we kept under the building. And we had cabbage. So we had corn and cabbage all went along, and deer that I killed. So we had plenty of deer and corn and cabbage, and that was pretty much all that we had to eat. Because after we bought the land, we only had $5,000 left to our name, no job. So we built the house and lived all winter long till the next spring on that $5,000. I got some little piddling jobs, building barns, laying rocks and stuff like that, and the boys went out with us. And so right away, after getting there, I met a young couple, began to share Christ with them. Turned out they were Christians. And I met their parents, and they were Christians. And they said they'd be interested in having a Bible study. And so I went over to their house, started teaching a Bible study. They said, we got some next-door neighbors, some Amish that had been kicked out of the church. Can I invite them over? I said, yeah, they brought their Amish over. I met another young couple, invited them, Tim Stoll and Rachel Miller, Rachel Stoll. She was just 16 at the time, and he was about 25. They just married. And so we had about 4 couples there, and I had a Bible study once a week, started to have it twice a week. And they wanted to sing, and so some of them could play the guitar and sing. We started singing, and then we started having little Sunday meetings, and Then another couple came in, and within a year or two, we had 30, 40 people, and a bunch of kids meeting together. And we weren't trying to start a church. We just were people that like mind that just wanted to get together and study the Bible and worship God. And I didn't go there with the idea of starting a ministry. It's just spontaneous. And in the process, I met some very strange people. I remember going down the road about 3 miles down in an old house with no running water and no electricity. By kerosene lantern at nighttime, there was 2 guys from Kentucky came down here, and there was another local guy, and the 2 guys from Kentucky couldn't read. So the local guy would read the Bible to them every night. And so I went down and sat with them, and they read through Matthew 22, 23, 24, somewhere in there, and read about where Jesus said, if you fail to visit those that are sick and in prison, and I don't remember the exact details of it, but it indicated that in Matthew that you found your salvation in visiting the sick and the afflicted and those in prison. And I remember that one guy, the local, put his hands over his face and began to moan, just moan like he was in agony. And he said, so-and-so down the road is sick, and I hadn't been to see him. My mother told me that if I didn't visit the sick, I'd go to hell. And I've got to go visit him. And he did. I went several times, and these people were some of the most serious, sober, seeking God people, lost and on their way to hell I've ever seen. They were desperate, but when they read the Bible, they read it as if it were a list of things you had to do to get good enough to please God. And they tried to get good enough. Eventually, the fellow I'm talking about put a shotgun to his throat and blew his head off. And that was maybe 15 years later after that. But man never found peace with God. And the other 2 guys drifted on. Well, there was another fellow that they told me about. His name was Tom Slayman. They said, he's a hippie. Whole families are hippies. And so I went down the road there and found this school bus jacked up on some firewood, wheels off of it. One of those old roundy school buses, not the modern kind. Smaller version. Hold about 30 people, 25, 30 people, kids. And that's what they lived in, that old school bus. But they had a campfire, and mostly they lived outside. So I remember going in, and the chickens got off the table, and they had me one of those fried pies they'd made up, and there's little pecked holes in it, like fried pie. I said, I'm really full. I just came from eating, and I'm doing anything right now, thank you. And so I would sit around the campfire, and what they did, they grew pot there, and they smoked pot, and they had some bad dogs, and they killed coyotes and deer and stuff, and just kind of anti-government, live your lifetime. Had 4 kids. Youngest one was a boy about 6. His name Bob, and I called him Barbara because he had long hair, and it seemed appropriate. And then there was TJ. He was about 10 years old, about the same age as my boys. And there was Kathy, and then there was 2 daughters, which were Sarah and Mary. Yeah, and they were both pretty little girls, about the age of my boys, and so my boys were attracted to them, and they got to be kind of buddies during their growing up years. And so old Tom there, he had tried some meditation, he tried some Eastern religions, and when you're smoking pot, everything seems like it's about the same, And he tried different things, and actually TJ was smoking pot or I forgot, maybe they're blowing it on him something. When he was 5 years old, he was getting high. So that's the kind of life they lived. And so Tom would start coming to some of our Bible studies. And right away, TJ got saved. 10 years old? 10 years old. And his mother and a couple of his sisters and eventually his little brother, Tom held on for maybe a couple of years, held out for maybe a couple of years. He was concerned. He wanted to hear everything we had to say. He was real compliant, but he just was so inundated with different religions and philosophies that he just couldn't see it. And eventually old Tom got saved. And so Tom built our first office and Kathy became our first volunteer worker, and TJ became one of our first missionaries that we sent out, along with Steve Snell. And so Tom is an old. I just saw him last week. He's got his mask. Lungs are messed up, and says he's got Parkinson's disease and different things like that. So Tom's on his last leg, I guess. But Tom's been one of my best friends, most best friends down through the ages. And so Tom, I appreciate you. Still appreciate you, even though your brain's only half there. And really it is sometimes. But the half that's there still loves the Lord and still worships God. And he said he listens to my tapes every night or every day. Goes back and reviews the messages and stuff. TJ right now is a missionary in Laos, been there a long time. Bob, the one I call Barbara, is a missionary in Mongolia. I heard from just the other day. They said, we survived the winter. I mean, they're in these little yurt. There's a yurt. The yurt's an animal, isn't it? They live in those little things, and it snows in deep, and they're, it's awful, awful. So Bob is there, and then his two sisters, both married Christians and have Christian families, and so that's a blessing to see them go on. Kathy was on our board for a long time, up until just recently, and so that was just the beginning. That was the way it started there. The little church, the ministry, we started having Bible studies 2 nights a week, lasted 2 or 3 hours, about 35 or 40 adults. And we went through verse by verse through the whole Bible, all the way up to the prophets, verse by verse, over a period of 2 or 3 years. And out of that is really what became the mission work. And many other people that you know around here, locals, became part of that church and were saved and built up in the faith during that time. So I'm going to stop there, and when I come back the next time, I'm going to tell you about how No Greater Joy Ministries got started.